I knew who I was before the abuse. I identified myself as Grayson before any of the abuse had happened. I am able to acknowledge that though the abuse happened, it is not determined who I am.
What I can say to the younger people out there, the Gen Zs and millennials, who are dealing with questions about their own gender and sexuality, is we support you. We are out here. We want to help you understand yourselves. My name is Dana. I am a 49-year-old transgender woman. I began transitioning about 4 or 5 years ago.
Hi, I'm Grayson. I'm 19 and I identify as trans male.
My family was perfectly normal. I have one brother, 2 parents. We were raised secular. My parents encouraged me to go to church if I wanted to, but I didn't. As a lot of people do, you start to figure yourself out socially and emotionally in college. In high school, the most hush thing was that, some of the guys might be gay. Like, can't talk about that. When I got to college, obviously there's an entire spectrum of gay and lesbian and bisexual and even a few transgender people. It was certainly my first exposure to a community of people, of diverse people. It was the campus GLBT group. And I went to a few of those meetings, not because I personally identified that way at the time, but I'm like, this is kind of my people. Probably about the mid 2000s, 2004, 2005, that I was really able to start putting my finger on the fact that maybe I wasn't entirely satisfied with my gender. Yeah, it's kind of started, gnawing at me. Part of it also might sound flighty, but it came to me in dreams a little bit. When you have a dream where you're just in a room and you look at a mirror and you see a reflection of yourself, but it's you, but just a little bit femme. Just, there's something a little different with your face, a little different with your hair. You recognize it, but it's a feminine you, and you feel something right there in the dream. That's your subconsciousness trying to talk to you and say, we need to have a chat.
I know from my personal experience when I came out to my family, the response that I got was less than desired, per se. I was shamed and pushed away from my family, and I know from my point of view, it made it difficult to be able to be myself and embrace myself. So I imagine to anyone else who might be closeted, might not be able to be who they want to be, it's a rough experience and they feel unsupported.
For the most part, I kind of just kept it tucked away. It's something that I would definitely tell people who are emotionally close to me that this was kind of how I thought and felt, but I always came up with every excuse not to pursue this. Like, hey, my gosh, I'm working this job right now, and it would be really awkward, and I'm not sure if I'd be able to keep the job, and I'm traveling a lot, and I've got kids, and all, every reason in the book I could tell myself why it would have been a bad idea for me to potentially transition. And finally, about 5 years ago, my elder kid, who they identify as non-binary themselves, we were just having a conversation online, actually. And they just kind of asked my thoughts about this and that and the other thing. And I kind of telling them how I felt about those things. And they're like, okay, well, you could, that's one way you could deal with those things that you're dealing with, or you could just, transition. And I think hearing it from them in that moment really kind of made it clear to me that I had officially run out of excuses. I've got lots of friends. I've got good health coverage. I had no more excuses. And so at age 45, I decided to begin transition. I was still able to get the medicine that I needed. I was able to have my doctor's appointments, consultations with psychologists and that sort of thing. And I found that it's actually not that difficult of a thing to navigate if you are privileged enough, and I acknowledge my privilege, that I have a good job, I have good health coverage, and that those resources are immediately open to me. I know that there are a lot of people who don't have those things, and it's harder to pursue, the medical aspects of things, be it cost or simply accessibility. My medical transition, I've been on HRT for over 4 years now. I've got smoother skin. I'm getting, not as much going on up here. It's great. I'm very comfortable in myself.
I have no way to get the health care that I need because I was slowly but surely taking it away from us. I can no longer get the treatments that are necessary to continue on who I am.
Are you on testosterone?
I was periodically. Insurance cut it, and so I am no longer on testosterone, and my body is reaping the consequences. I have severe joint pain. My voice is stuck in a weird range of 13-year-old boy. It's affected my social life where I no longer feel connected to my community because I've gone through and had enough change that my family, my community have disowned me, but not enough change that I can comfortably view myself as myself. Yes, I would like to grow a beard. That is in my goals and my plans. I am wearing a binder, which it helps a lot. It helps with the dysphoria and helps me feel a bit more connected to myself. Unfortunately, top surgery is so expensive that it's not in the plans as of right now. The goal is to move out of state to have these procedures done because insurance will cover them and they are not banned.
Fairly uneventful for me in terms of my transition. I've had tons of support from my friends. Definitely indicates that I've made the right friends along the way. My parents have been accepting. It was a bit of a jolt for them. Obviously, 45 years later, they, get a call from their kid saying, yeah, I'm transitioning, but they've dealt with it.
I did not go to therapy. I had really no support system. I have only started having a support system in the last 8 months, and that was when my significant other and I started dating. It made it easier for me to be able to be myself, but then it also was painful to look back at the gender dysphoria issue and be like, oh, I really was struggling and I had no one there for me. In my church, there was no support system. There was no love shown. The people who I thought were going to be there for me the most and support me the most ended up abandoning me, which from there I essentially pushed myself away from the church, because aren't we to love as God has loved? But that's not showing God's love. That's just showing hate. School did not accept my pronouns, my name. The way that my high school had been, I had started my freshman year and COVID hit. And so we all did the virtual learning and stuff like that. And I had been going by my dead name at that point. And so even when I changed my name in the system to Grayson, no one referred to me as Grayson or by my pronouns. They were insistent on keeping me this person. I had no support. I was in middle school involved in sports. I was involved in football because why not? Football is awesome. And come high school, I was forced to drop out because there was no room for girls on the team. And they never wanted to accept who I was, even as a person.
I'm sure you all understand that as teachers, you are one of the biggest influences in a child's life. You are there to put facts and other ideas into their heads. You are there for advice. You are there to evaluate them. You judge these kids on objective bases for a number of things. What the kids don't need is for you to subjectively judge them simply for being who they're trying to be. And I know that with the legal environment being what it is, surrounding what teachers can and cannot say to these kids, that if you're trying to support these kids, your hands might be tied. But there are ways to show that you support these kids that doesn't have to run afoul of whatever great idea someone decided to put into law. These kids need to know that you understand what they're going through, and that you are able and willing to give them the tools that they need to navigate life.
The suicide rate in LGBT and trans teens are significantly higher. I have attempted, I have tried, as has my partner. My partner is transgender as well, and we are both facing a lot of controversy with the Ohio system and trying to work through the mental health system together as we try to help others with how badly Ohio is handling everything, with the mental health of trans teenagers to even the medical health. It's being taken care of and dealt with wrong. It's disheartening to think about the fact that a politician has control over my body, essentially. It enrages me to think about the next generations of transgender youth who are struggling right now because we've taken their rights away before they even get a chance to say anything about it. In all honesty, it's painful. It's painful to have to acknowledge and say that, yes, I live in the state of Ohio where they are taking away transgender rights and medical care.
Not really one specific area that I think of that, oh gosh, that's going to be really problematic, because it's just everywhere. In businesses, in public spaces, sporting events, the gym, wherever you go, you're kind of always expected to be presenting your gender And suddenly you feel very out of place if you're presenting a gender that 90% of the public is not immediately expecting. And that's daunting as hell. There's just no way around that. And I know that a lot of people have had very negative experiences in public, in restaurants, and just simple places of business. And that sucks. And that can't be allowed. Ultimately something has to be done about that. But I think folks just need to realize that this is something where we're simply trying to be who we are. And that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're not going to turn off who we are every time that we have to go out and potentially interact with some business or some member of the public who may not be entirely accepting of who we are.
Going through the sexual abuse made gender dysphoria a lot more difficult to deal with. It heightened the feelings of not feeling aware of my own body and feeling at home and at peace with my own body. I could no longer look at it as, okay, this is a temporary thing that I can work through, I can fix. It became a thing of, oh my gosh, this is here forever. These feelings are here forever. It made things very difficult. I don't believe that the sexual abuse changed anything towards me when it came to who I am. Because I've always been me. I've always been Grayson. The abuse will not change who I am. I knew who I was before the abuse. I identified myself as Grayson before any abuse had happened. I am able to acknowledge that though the abuse happened, it is not determined who I am.
That's not a me problem, that's a them problem. We are supposed to live in a civil society where everyone has the right and the freedom to be who they want to be, to dress how they want to dress, and it's not up to other individuals to tell an individual person, hey, I don't like that. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Being supportive and showing kindness and love can go a long way. Being open to learning about someone can change someone's life in a positive way. And it can help them grow as the person they want to be.
As an older person, a Gen Xer, transitioning in my midlife, mine is definitely a different but by no means unique experience. I know of many other people who have also been transitioning later in life. And I think it's wonderful that we have the awareness and the resources socially and medically that allow people to do this. What I can say to the younger people out there, the Gen Zs and millennials, who are dealing with questions about their own gender and sexuality, is we support you. We are out here. We want to help you understand yourselves and give you a safe space mentally and socially for you to decide who you really are, who you want to be, free from any negative pressures that are being imposed upon you by people who may not have your best interests at heart. It is absolutely your right to determine your own course through life. And gender is such an intrinsic expression of who we are. It is absolutely vital that people be able to make those decisions based on what makes them truly fulfilled and happy, and not based on what they think society needs them to do, or what they think they have to do just to be safe. They shouldn't have to conceal who they are. I know there are folks who suggest that this is some kind of fad. You know, they might look at me and say, oh, that's just an older guy deciding that they want to dress up. No. I have wanted this for over 25 years. And I finally decided, after 45 years of being a man, that I was really tired of that. And I have become a woman. And that's my choice, and that is my right to make that choice. And everyone else, regardless of how old you are, you have the right to say, this is who I am. I'm a boy. I'm a girl. I am non-binary. I am agender. It doesn't matter. You have the right to determine who you are.